So I want to move this on and let's talk about Brexit. So I voted for Brexit. I think you supported it, Tom. I don't know whether you voted or not or anything, Alexander. It's up to you to say or not, right? But where is it? What's happening? What's likely to roll out?
Right. We've now had more extensions, more delays, and more extensions points clearly to some kind of deal being in the works. That's my own personal view. Because if there was no deal, if we were really purposefully moving towards some kind of a deal, then why have more delays and more extensions? I don't see the logic of this. And unfortunately, the reality is when you negotiate with the European Union, whenever you negotiate and you look for a deal and you try to achieve a deal, it is always on their terms. Always. Invariably so.
German.
Absolutely, because of the kind of things we were discussing before. These people cannot conceive of any deal that is not on their terms. And there are far too many people still in Britain who don't seem to understand this. Now, what the form of that deal is going to be, I do not know, but I predict it is a deal that nobody's going to be happy with. Both the people who really want Brexit will be unhappy with it because it is not the Brexit that they wanted, which is basically a clean break Brexit. I read a very interesting article by Matthew Paris in the Times, Matthew Paris being an ardent Remainer, but he accepted that the logic of Brexit points to a no-deal outcome. That's always been the logic of it, so that the Brexiters will not be happy. And the Remainers will never be happy because as far as they're concerned, any deal that Boris Johnson comes back with will be less good than that which they wanted, which is to put Britain back into the European Union, because their mindset and their ideology is exactly the same as that of the people in Paris, Brussels, and Berlin.
I tend to agree with that assessment, but at the same time, there's also the bigger picture, which is that I kind of believe, actually, that the Great Reset has not trumped Brexit. And it's bigger than Brexit. It's more important than Brexit. And that they came to terms with the idea that that everybody needs to save faces by staying engaged, but knowing full well that there's not going to be a deal. I can see that. I'm not saying that you're wrong, Alex. What I'm saying is I can see the counter argument to this, the other side of this, which is that the only way the British state in any way survives this is that they go out on a no deal. The Germans will be apoplectic. They won't be happy, but the French will get along with it. Then the Dutch will get along with it. Everybody will eventually get along with it. Or the UK or the EU will eventually cave at the last minute and get Britain everything they want, which effectively is a no deal. Because Boris has already sold the country out to the Great Reset. Okay. When he was standing up there in February saying we're going to go for herd immunity and we're not going to do this and we're going to quarantine the sick and we're going to do all the normal things one would do in any kind of pandemic or any kind of infectious disease outbreak, which we've been doing for thousands of years as humans, we're going to do it normally. He was immediately just attacked and destroyed, and his prime ministership and his government was immediately under intense assault. This is how they destroyed his popularity rating. Now, he and Donald Trump are supposedly the only two people who lost support of all the major leaders during a pandemic. Giuseppe Conte's numbers went up, Emmanuel Macron's numbers went up, Merkel's numbers went through the roof, because during a real crisis, people coalesce around the sitting leader and they don't want change. Well, not the two guys who were standing athwart the big project. Those guys had to be destroyed. Boris Johnson was put in the hospital once, then they tried to freaking kill him another time where they got a guy running into him. There's all this stuff where Johnson was absolutely put under, in every way. You and I've talked about this before. In every way, he was put under pressure to cave. And if he didn't cave over Brexit, he was going to cave over the coronavirus, over COVID-19. And he did so there. And at the same time, as Patrick Henningsen reminded me a few weeks ago when I chatted with him, Stanley Johnson, his dad, is part of that crowd, of that Malthusian crowd, that there's too many people, that, all of this stuff. And, look, the apple doesn't fall that far from the tree. And as Boris's so I see Boris as a very conflicted person. He's not very strong. He has probably has terribly. I mean, you wouldn't marry a woman or go out with a woman like he does, and let her set policy for him if he wasn't a weak man and didn't already believe in some of this stuff in the first place. But at the same time, he's also a strong enough political animal to know that he cannot, in any way, manner, shape, or form, betray Brexit. So how do you betray Brexit? You betray Brexit by locking the country down and destroying it anyway, to make it as uninvestable from the outside as everything. Because the whole point of not going for a no deal, the whole point of that Europe wants to tie the Britain back to the EU is not out of vanity. It's about making sure that Britain doesn't succeed outside of the EU, because then that tells Hungary and Poland and Italy and all the rest of them and the Danes they can leave and there won't be any real consequences. So if you can destroy them economically and politically in the process, then you win anyway, even though you wind up with a no. So the Brexiteers get everything they want and they're still not very happy. That to me seems like as likely an outcome as some horrible stitch-up deal, because Labour is not going to all of a sudden come into power with Keir Starmer and win, an election that after they get rid of Johnson, because they've already neutered Johnson. There's no need to get rid of Johnson now. They've already killed him politically. Mm-hmm. He can stay in power, and Rishi Sunak and the rest of them can just run the party because they are right. So to me, it seems like the deal's already done in that respect. That I think it's actually that they just want the Great Reset. They don't care how they get it, and they can allow Brexit to happen and still kill them. And still kill the Brits. And that would be even more humiliating and so very German.
So very German. Indeed. Anyway, we will see what happens over the next couple of days. But we will see. I'm not sanguine about this outcome.
I'm not either.
No.
But that, I think, brings us to the next part of what's going on in European politics, right? Which is the scenario with Hungary and Poland's veto of the big Corona apocalypse bailout bill and fiscal integration compact. And it's been a very interesting thing. And I didn't write about Hungary for a long, long time, even though I was being fed behind the scenes information constantly by a friend of mine in Hungary, who keeps her ear to the grindstone and keeps me well informed. When I saw the veto come down, I thought it was the most consequential bit of news of that period of time. It was far more important than any court case that Trump was putting up or anything like that, because it told us that they still had the ability to force the European Union to honor its original deals. Angela Merkel did what she always does, as you described so many times, Alexander, that she makes a deal. It's not worth anything, because 3 months later she comes back with the original terms that she wanted in the first place, and then says, I dare you to veto it now after you've agreed in principle to this and gotten everybody used to it. And Viktor Orban still told her to go, pound sand, which I thought was hilarious, right? And then we get a couple of weeks worth of arm twisting, and supposedly they've caved. But when I saw them do that, everybody asked me what I thought about that, and I said, well, let's wait to see what the text of everything actually is, because the text is going to tell the tale of the tape. And when George Soros comes out and says the European Union has completely caved to Viktor Orban and the Polish terrorists, I got to think that they got what they wanted, which is it's not that they got everything they wanted, but they were able to put this off long enough until Merkel's out of power.
Yes.
And I think that's the key, because and that's what Soros was most angry about.
Yes.
Because his pet attack dog Merkel finally failed him. Didn't give him what he wanted. Didn't give him sanctions on Russia or this or that or a new a feckless Armenian jackass running things over there and all the rest of it. Right. He finally didn't get his cookie, and he was apoplectic. And that tells you that it puts things in motion, that there's something that they're planning for 2021 that they needed to be able to bring Hungary and Poland into line during 2021. Putting it off to 2022 means that they've got to alter their plans.
Yes.
Which is the Great Reset of the monetary system.
Yes, I mean there are many things, because of course when I saw that there'd been an agreement, I said to myself, well, the Hungarians and the Poles have clearly caved, because they've agreed to this extraordinary rule of law provision in the budget, and they've accepted a meaningless and empty, a non-binding, non-legally binding declaration, which frankly, when you're dealing with people like Merkel and Ursula von Leyen, the very last thing you want. But anyway, or need. I mean, it's not going to help you. But then I have to say, I started to look into this a bit more closely, and it seems to me that this non-legal declaration, non-legally binding declaration, actually is legally binding. Actually, so I think it is, because what it says is that this provision in the budget has to be interpreted according to it. And if it isn't interpreted according to it in that way, then there are legal remedies. So I think actually that it is legally binding. So I think Soros is right, and I've changed my view on this. But I think there is something even bigger here, something really very, very big happened. And it hasn't been widely reported. And the first hint I got about it was in that article of Soros that you mentioned. And that is, it seems, there was some talk in the lead up to this, that the European Union was looking for a way of circumventing the Hungarian and Polish vetoes.
Yes.
Now, by the way, I ought to make it very clear that I know for a fact that the vetoes have been made by various EU countries, and they've been ignored. And I'll give you one example when I know that happened. I actually know for a fact that happened. I'm familiar with the people. I know everything on this. Shortly after Tsipras and the Syriza government came to power in 2015, the European Union wanted to impose sanctions on certain Russian individuals. And there was a meeting of the Council of Ambassadors, which is the place where people vote, and the Greek government gave instructions to its ambassador, their ambassador, that he should vote against this, because they said, we've only just come into power, we don't know what this is all about, we need time, we're not saying this is not something we will ever agree to, but we're not agreeing to it now. That veto was ignored. It was simply ignored.
Yep.
It was not reported. It did not appear on the Europa website. But what happened directly after was that Tsipras and all his ministers were informed that they were now under investigation for Russian links by the various intelligence agencies of the European Union. So, I mean, so be very clear that the veto has always existed for the smaller states, more in theory than in practice, on many occasions. But anyway, on this occasion, it was too public. Poland in particular is too big a country. Orban is too well-known a politician for the veto to be completely disregarded. So the European Union was saying to the Poles and the Hungarians, look, you've got to agree to this, because if you don't, we will find a way around your veto. Either we will do it by coming to some kind of agreement between ourselves, which will somehow be separate from the European Union itself. Right. And then, of course, there was legal advice that couldn't be done, because that would be altering the treaties and that would lead to legal challenges, so that was impossible. And then they said, well, we've actually found various devices in various treaties which would enable us to do it, and simply to ignore the treaty in that way. And then what happened was Orban heard about this, and he said to the Europeans, if that happens, if our veto on such an important subject is overridden, we are going to invoke Article 50. We're going to stick. Yeah, absolutely. That's what he said.
I did not know that.
Exactly. So that is huge. That is huge.
See, I always knew.
That's been reported publicly.
No. It's not been. It's barely been reported at all.
But it has happened.
If you drill into Soros's article, you will see a hint of that effect there. But that, I understand, is what happened. So that is huge. That is enormous. Okay, right. And that, in my opinion, is the single most important thing about this whole.
No, absolutely. That if he threatened Article 50, and with his political standing in Hungary, he can get that done in no time flat, and they'll be out, and they have their own currency, just like the Brits.
Exactly.
And a good friend of mine, a patron of mine, we talk about European politics all the time. He's also a Brit and a businessman, a world traveler and whatnot. And he comments on my stuff constantly. So, he's not hard to find these arguments. I'm not outing anybody here or doxing anyone. I won't use his name. He makes the argument, has made the argument for a long time, that the Danes are actually the next ones to invoke Article 50 because they're in the similar position. They're looking at having to have all this money transferred away from them. They still have their own currency. They don't have any political need to continue in this. They're one of the frugal five. And I'm like, yeah, so I keep arguing Italy because it's to be the most, but he makes an argument for the Danes. I make an argument for Italy and Hungary, Poland. If Poland would, one of the things that I'm going to be interested in to see over the course of 2021 is the following. With Donald Trump out of the picture, most likely. Hold out hope that it's not. Donald Trump out of the picture, most likely. Nord Stream 2 is going to get done. Merkel is going to try and use gas transit as a means by which, through Nord Stream 2, as means by which to put political pressure on Poland to do what they want. If the Poles would finally grow up and open up dialogue with the Russians, they could bypass the Germans. The Poles have to make a decision again. The Germans are trying to put the screws to them and take them out. They've lost their ally in the United States, Donald Trump. They have a temporary gas transit deal across Ukraine for the next 5 years. They have 5 years to repair their relationship with the Russians and get a gas pipeline built, which will give them the economic independence to then tell Germany to go scratch. And then the whole thing starts to fall apart by 2025. And it's all down to the Law and Justice Party getting over the Russophobia. I don't know if it's possible or not. I don't know Polish politics well enough. I don't think it will. But I also know that Viktor Orban, if he's already willing to go to Article 50, that means he's also going to be having talks with the Bulgarians, the Romanians, and the Russians about getting South Stream brought in because because the EU are blocking the extra trains of Turk Stream.
Yes.
Right. And then we have, Turk Stream 2 is going to go to Serbia, Hungary, and all the rest of it. Right? So something is going to break here, and something's going to give. And all of this, again, as you said, an oligarch-led system is metastable. And so because of that, something is going to break. And the Russians are sitting back going, and notice, am I wrong about this? This is something just to make sure that I haven't misread this. But not only has Putin, but Lavrov and Shoigu have all told the Europeans, for all intents and purposes, we have no diplomatic ties with you anymore. And after what you pulled with Navalny and after what you pulled in Belarus. So Merkel is going to get Nord Stream 2, and then she's going to get nothing else. So there's no Nord Stream 3, right, which she needs.
Yes.
It means that with Putin having flipped Turkey, do you think, and Azerbaijan, with the Nagorno-Karabakh situation, do you think that there's going to be any more Caspian gas coming out of the across into Europe and through the boondoggle? No, there's not. What's going to happen is Rosatom is going to give Erdogan another sweetheart deal for another nuclear power plant. Is what's going to happen.
Yes,
and game, set, match, and Europe is done.
Yes, I agree. I just also wanted to reinforce, and this is something that is actually personal to me because I've know lots of Polish people and know obviously lots of Russian people. These two countries, Poland and Russia, really need to bury the hatchet. They really need to do that. And the initiative has to come from Poland. The Russian door for Poland is open. What the problem is that the Law and Justice Party is still stuck in the political ideas of the 1920s of Poland playing what the first Polish independence leader called this Promethean foreign policy of establishing Poland as, the leader in Eastern Europe somehow against Russia. That is a totally obsolete policy. It is completely counterproductive to Poland. What Poland needs to do is to rebalance its relations with Russia, open up to Russia, at which point its leverage over Germany and the Europeans will grow exponentially.
Exactly. with their own currency, they have it's so obvious. It's been staring them in the face for years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's one of the downsides of the Trump presidency.
Yes.
It really is, and it's one of the things that I wished if I had been advising Trump from the beginning, I would have never held out my arms to Poland. I would have said, let Nord Stream 2 through.
Yes.
Tell the Poles you're not going to bring them natural gas. This is not about America first. This is about if you want to rebuild relationships and you want to destroy the Germans, this is how you do it. You flip Poland and you allow Poland to be the wedge country to destroy to destroy the relationship between Germany and Russia.
Indeed.
Okay, that was the way of it. And freaking Kissinger gave him the wrong advice. Of course he did. He's Henry Kissinger.
Exactly.
So, and I would have said, don't worry about this. There'll be plenty of, if that happens, Germany will be begging you for LNG because Putin is not going to give her Nord Stream 3 if he's got Poland. And you can make this case to him in a heartbeat, and he'll go for it. And he'll be happy to sign off on that.
Yes.
Absolutely happy to sign off on it. Give him Nord Stream 2. It's done. You can't stop it. Ignore the neocons. Tell the Israelis to go scratch. That's not what this is about. This is the most efficient way to bring American liquefied natural gas into Europe. It's the most efficient way to create an independent Eastern Europe that acts as a true, honest to God buffer between the failing Western European Union and a rising Russia, which would then allow Russia to maybe moderate its strategic partnership with China, which is exactly what you want anyway.
Exactly, yeah.
Poland is the freaking key to all this.
Absolutely. Now, on Polish attitudes, I'm going to say a few things. Firstly, Poland and Russia are far more similar to each other than each is to Western Europe. I mean, in fact, it's surprising how similar they are. If you know these,
I've never been there. I would love to go.
The other thing, it's a wonderful country, actually. By the way. And also, my own personal view about Polish attitudes to Russia is that there is an awful lot of ritual in this. I think that the real fire behind it all has gone, actually. Right. I mean, they're not really, the issues that really set them against each other just don't exist in any real reality anymore. These are obsolete memories from the past. They don't apply anymore. When Poles and Russians meet and interact with each other, as they do in London a lot, they get on extremely well because there are so many cultural similarities. They go far beyond, those cultural similarities go far beyond a joint liking for vodka, if I can say. I mean, they are two countries that, far from being enemies, are natural and compatible friends. So it's something that it shouldn't take very much to happen. And when it happens, which I predict one day it will solidify peace in Europe in ways nothing else can do, and it will dramatically change the whole political climate across Europe in a very positive way.
Because with the Russians, look, with the way the Europeans are going, we can bring this down around to the market effects of the Great Reset. With what Europe is doing and the purposeful destruction of the bourgeois middle class in Europe in order to bring about the Great Reset, Russia is already becoming and is going to continue to be a destination for safe haven capital inflows. It's already there. It's very small because there's all these barriers to it and everything else. And again, cryptocurrency can help that process along. Yes. Great Russian project that I happen to like that will help that along. But it also means that the Russians have to also be willing to accept that inflow in some ways. And Herman Greff over at the leader at Sberbank, he gets this. Yes. Every time I listen to him talk, I understand that Herman Greff gets it. He's not an oligarch. He's actually trying to help the Russians modernize their financial system to accept the billions of dollars that want to flow out of Europe into Russia to help jumpstart the expansion of its economy, and to do so with a non-hostile attitude towards cryptos.
Yes.
Because let the private banking system run it, as opposed to, he said this explicitly, let the private banking system run it as opposed to having to go to the Bank of Russia and the Duma. Unfortunately, there are way too many people at both the Bank of Russia and the Duma that are in pay to the IMF and to the West that they're stonewalling this. But Herman Greff gets it. Watch him very carefully. So when you understand that, right? And part of what Europe is trying to do, when I say that they're trying to steal all the wealth of the United States and bring it to Europe, what they're really trying to do is they're trying to keep capital from flowing out of Europe into the United States as they go through the Great Reset. So it's because eventually capital goes where it's treated best. Okay, it's just going to flow to where it's treated best. So that Biden and Harris are going to raise taxes. They're going to destroy capital generation here in the West. They're going to raise corporate income taxes. They're going to do everything terrible in order to normalize themselves with the unbelievably stupid Europeans. Okay, no offense, it's the truth. Now, those two things, that's the means by which you can affect the Great Reset in Europe without having trillions of dollars in capital and old money leak away back to the United States, like it did during World War II to escape getting bombed. That money is going to flow to other places then. If it's not going to flow to the United States, it's going to flow to China, it's going to flow to Russia, it's going to flow to India, it's going to flow to, I got news for you, it's going to flow to Iran and a variety of other places if it can't go to the United States. Some of it will go to South America. It will go somewhere. They can't control it all. All those things we talked about earlier about, black markets. If you tell me that my ABT card that I can only buy toilet paper with it, I'm going to be able to buy toilet paper. I'm going to turn toilet paper into Bitcoin. I can do it. Someone will figure out an exchange rate for this and it will happen in order to launder the money out of the system. So why sanctions are just dumb. Yeah. So we have to be understanding of this. And Poland has the opportunity to help jumpstart that entire process if they would just get over themselves.
Yes.
And allow themselves to allow either Morawiecki or Duda, one of them, to show up, or the foreign minister to show up at St. Petersburg, SPIEF or, Valdai or something like that, or, whatever, even a G20 meeting.
Yes.
And just have coffee and be photographed having coffee.
Yes.
It would change everything.
Everything. I completely agree. I completely agree with this. By the way, just to say something, Tom, because obviously I follow Russian news, your predictions about Russia becoming a safe haven are coming true, as you obviously know, and you were far ahead of everyone on this. I mean, all you have to do is to look at the Russian markets and yield curves, all these things I don't really understand very well. But people in Russia themselves, to their astonishment, are now commenting upon this. I mean, it is in fact, you can actually see something that something is happening which people did not expect, and they're astonished, and it's being acknowledged that it is actually being.
Thankfully, now if they get used to it, now they can put pressure on their government to open things up and actually listen to Herman Gref and actually get this started.
Well, it did.
Because this next 2 to 5 years are going to be really pivotal here. Because the ruble is undervalued, even at 73 today. It's completely undervalued.
Yes.
Like, they had no business going to 80, for Christ's sake. It had no business going to 65.
No.
But I'm looking at I told my people a couple of months ago, I said, watch a monthly close below 76. I think it was right at the end of November. I said, watch a monthly close below 76. It'll be a technical breakdown. Now, they avoided it, but then on December 1st or December 2nd, whenever the market opened, boom, the thing dropped through it, and now it's trading at 73. And, you're watching Russian stocks are already trading at all-time highs. American investors and European investors are now looking at the opportunity to double dip.
Yes.
You're getting the appreciation of the currency as well as the appreciation of the equity markets themselves. So the capital's flowing in. Nabilena's behind the curve. She's going to have to cut rates because there's such a demand for rubles as capital is flowing into the country that they've pegged the freaking yield curve below the benchmark rate.
Yes. Well, we won't start talking about Nabilena. We do. We'll be here all week. I will just finish by saying, because I've had dealings with Sberbank, and it may surprise people to know that Sberbank is the bank that Herman Gref runs. In my experience, it's quite possibly, the best retail bank in the world. And that's a pretty remarkable thing.
Wow. I knew that taking a position in the Russian ruble was smart.
I know. It is quite astonishing to see the extent to which it has been turned around in the last decade. It is absolutely remarkable to see how successfully and how thoroughly it's been done.
And that gives him so much power within a Russian financial oligarchy, which is still hostile to a resurgent Russia because they're all still Atlanticists.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Gref is accreting to himself the kind of political capital that will allow for a proper emergence of the Russian middle class to really, and actually, now that you say these things, Alex, it helps me to understand as a futurist or as some projection, as one who will project into the future now. One of the things that's been holding back the evolution and the maturity of the Russian political system is the evolution and development of a Russian middle class, of a real Russian middle class.
Yes.
And you can't have that without a functional banking system that allows a functional banking system that isn't extractive.
Right.
Okay, you can only. We have the exact opposite in the United States. We had such a strong middle class.
Yes,
that they could extract from it over 100 years.
Yes,
and now finally collapse it.
Yes.
In Russia, they have to build it from scratch. And it's going to come from the banking system. And Gref is absolutely right that the future of banking, as we know it, is going to be a hybrid between commercial banks of today, state-run central banks and state-run currencies, and cryptocurrencies.
Yes,
and
he understands it.
Exactly. I said, and cryptocurrencies.
And cryptocurrencies.
Tom, Alexander, on that note, I want to make one final comment and then we're going to finish up, right?
Okay.
Which is for Western anti-Russian propaganda apart. You set it to one side. Russia is really, really well run and doing very, very well as far as.
Absolutely it is.
And then I would say, from what I can tell, Putin's the only world leader of any global standing, given what he's done for Russia, been fabulous for Russia. Okay, now, it has been a complete pleasure and delight. The next time we do this, it may be 12 hours long. I
don't know that my writing schedule can handle that, or my voice, but I will do my level best.
Yes, I've got another recording in 15 minutes as well.
Quite all right, dude. I've got a lot of work to do to get everything out the door before I leave on Friday morning. So
yes, it's been an absolute delight talking to you both, learning loads and loads and loads. For everybody who's watching, I'm going to have all the links, relevant links, so you can go and find them on their channels and stuff in the description notes. Please do go check them out. Anything you guys want to say before we finish up?
It has been a huge pleasure. We scratched the surface on many things, and we've gone below the surface on some of them. And we need to do this even more because we can take really deep dives. This is the great pleasure of these sorts of programs, because, of course, when we do 15-minute programs, as we sometimes do on the Duran, we can only absolutely scratch the surface.
No, Alex, it is always a real pleasure to sit down with you, because listening to you talk always fires up, the other side of my, makes me assess things, and I always find new angles on the fly that I hadn't thought of before. And so many of these things, the whole thing about Article 50 is just unbelievable. And I thank you, because I'll write about this for a month now. So it's all good. So I love talking to both of you, and the next time we can do this. And if I don't talk to either of you before that, you have a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year. Absolutely. And we will chat again in what purports to be, or promises to be, an even worse 2021 than 2020, but which should be good for business for all of us.
Yeah.
So
all right, Tom, Alexander, thank you so much. I'll be in touch with you both. And for anybody who's watching, comments, questions, what do you think of what they're saying and the arguments that are being presented? And between now and when I see you next, please keep filling your pockets with crypto profits. This is Crypto Rich and Crypto Tom and Crypto Alexander signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.